Okay, we've got Facebook Live. Let's bring that up. YouTube has gone live. Twitch is still working on it. Hello, Big John. Happy Friday to you. Got some really good opening image GIFs here for you guys this time. It's harder when you find the movies that are from the 40s and the 50s. There's not as much of that action. And even the 80s movies usually are not that great. But The Fly just has so much awesome, squicky, gross out stuff. Oh, look at that. Just incredible. Hello, Tracy. Hello, Neil. Hello, Richard. Everybody is having a grand old time. We got people come in. We'll give it one more minute. Let people come in before I say hello to you. Let you see my Friday face, my happy Friday face. Hello, Shannon. Hello, Mark. Who's the monster? We're all monsters, Mark. We're all monsters. Nelson McClintock. What's up, man? I got caught between your nickname and your real name there. So now you're Nelson instead of Nelzone or Nelson. One person on YouTube. Who's on YouTube? Give me a shout out. You're on YouTube. Neil Parks. Hello. Brundlefly. I know, right? I was so excited when Dr. Kiki picked this monster. I cannot guess how many times my friends and I watched this movie way back in the day on the VHS, as you do. Oh, God. John Viscar in the chat room says he got to watch one of the test screenings. Mario, you're going to have to explain that to me a little bit later. I'm not quite following that. We'll get that. Virginia over in YouTube. Hello. Welcome. Tracy. I tip my ear. Exactly. I wish he had put in that part said, "What? I can't hear you." That would have been great. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time to say hello to my face. Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. We got a great crowd. People are in here to watch Dr. Kiki talk about Brundlefly and listen to me babble on. My guest today is Dr. Kiki Sanford, a kick-ass science communicator. She's a podcaster. And here's my pimpage for the guest this week. You know, every week we pimp something from the guest. We pimp something from the host. The pimpage this week, of course, is none other than This Week in Science, one of the longest running podcasts in the world. I was listening to this thing way back in 2005 when it came out. Their top 11 science stories for 2021 is going to air this December 29th. You can learn more at twis.org or Google This Week in Science podcast. Subscribe to it. If you like my work, you will love that show. And of course, the thing I'm pimping, I've also been podcasting since 2005, and my podcast since 2005 is Scott Sigler's audiobook. So if you're here to have fun watching Dr. Kiki do her thing and you're not familiar with who I am, I release unabridged fiction, a little chunk of it every Sunday. You get it from #1 New York Times bestseller. It's a lot of gross out science-based stuff, just like The Fly. You guys should dig it. Go to scottsigler.com/subscribe to sign up with your favorite podcast app. Before I introduce my guest today, let me tell you what's coming up. The last episode of season 1 of This Week in Science will be next week, December 17th, with author J.D. Netto, one of the hardest working people in show business. This guy is just a nonstop machine of innovation and trying to do stuff with fiction to get his books out there. And he reminds me a lot of me back in the day when I started podcasting. He's just always looking for a different way to get out there, reach people. I think you'll like him. And of course, our very special heartwarming Christmas episode is the movie Krampus. So he's a delightful human. Hope you tune in. JD's the delightful human. Krampus, not quite so delightful. Let me get Dr. Kiki queued up here. Asked to unmute. Ladies and gentlemen, go to my main. Dr. Kiki Sanford is dedicated to making science accessible. She's recognized one of the top science media personalities in the nation, holds a doctorate in molecular, cellular, and integrative physiology, emphasis on neurobiology, and a bachelor's degree in wildlife, fisheries, and conservation biology from the University of California, Davis, and as a specialist in learning and memory, she has worked for On Networks, Revision 3, The Video Project, The Science Channel, Twit TV, and has appeared on CBS's The Doctors. Dr. Kiki, welcome to Monster of the Week.
Hi, thanks so much for having me on, Scott. It's been so long.
It's been a long time. Well, I used to live in San Francisco. Do you still live in the Bay Area?
No, I am in Portland, Oregon.
Portland, Oregon.
Going on 6 years now.
It's crazy. Like the amount of time we've known each other in the podcasting space is starting to be like a lifetime for people that can actually drive cars. So
That's my whole life.
That's
exactly.
a little bit, it still overwhelms me a little bit about how long we've been doing this podcasting thing. We're going to dive into Brundlefly in just a moment, but many of the people tuning in are fans of my podcast or discovered me through my podcast. So if you could tell us a little bit about This Week in Science.
This Week in Science is a weekly science talk show. We discuss stories from the last week in science, lots of different areas of science. So we cover physics, space, biology. I love brains, so lots of brains. Animals. My co-host Blair has a segment of the show called Blair's Animal Corner. There's usually invertebrate sex or spiders involved in some way or another. We have a lot of fun, and I mean, we have to keep doing it for as long as we have.
And you've been doing that podcast since 2005, but the actual show itself is even older than that, right?
Yes, I started the show with a couple of friends of mine when I was a graduate student at UC Davis, and we approached the Davis campus radio station and said, "Hey, you need a science program." And they said, "Okay." And so in 2000, that's when we got started.
2000. So over 20 years of working on This Week in Science. Congratulations and a big thank you as one of the people out there really working to promote science communication, make it accessible, make it understandable for people who are interested in science but don't really have the depth of knowledge to understand the more intricate stuff. You guys have always done a great job on that show, and it's greatly appreciated. Greatly appreciated. Now that we've talked about
doing
science, let's talk about Brundlefly. This is from the 1986. I call it a gross out horror classic because there's just so much awesome gross out stuff in this. The Fly. Why did you pick Brundlefly as your monster?
I love Jeff Goldblume. I think he's amazing. And he's amazing in The Fly as the Brundlefly. But the monster itself, I think, is just this culmination of human hubris. And at that time in the 80s, it was this interesting idea of genetics and genetic modification and gene splicing before we were really even doing a lot of the stuff that we're doing today. And so it just was this grotesque, it is a grotesque representation of humanity's delving into those areas and the wrongness that could come from it.
Yeah. And talk about science going horribly wrong. I'm not sure any movie encapsulates that concept better than The Fly. Couple little mistakes there. Little hubris got in the way. Some details on the film. This was directed, of course, by David Cronenberg. Some people say this is his best film, his masterpiece. Stars Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis, who were and went on to continue to be huge stars. The budget was $9 to $15 million. It's unclear. Adjusted, that's $22 million to $38 million in today's dollars. Box office, $60.6 million in 86. Adjusted, that's $153 million. This movie was a really, really huge hit and just freaked people the F out. What is it about the Brundlefly monster itself that is frightening to you?
It's the lack of, or the loss of humanity, whereas because of the fusion of the fly and the fly's genetic material, the essence of the fly, with the human character that's portrayed, Brundle, by Jeff Goldblum, and the fusing of that, and then the slow loss of humanity. I mean, Brundle was already kind of on the edge as far as having emotions and that kind of stuff to begin with, but by the end of the movie, he's lost it. He's just forgotten what the important aspects are. He just wants to survive.
Now, is this, from the movie's perspective of the movie, do you think this is one of those literary devices, like where he doesn't become a monster, where the creators were revealing the monster the character had been all along? Or is he a genuinely good person trying to do something incredible, but once he just, like Frankenstein's monster, just gets taken over by this thing?
Yeah, so it does have that. I think it does have the Frankenstein's monster kind of essence, but yeah, I don't think he was a bad person to start with. I think he was a person with a narrow field of view of the world. He was a genius focused on his research question. He was going to solve teleportation. He was going to create this ability, humans teleporting, and it was going to be, he had missed out on a Nobel Prize already. He's going to get that Nobel Prize. And so he was just focused on his selfish goals.
Okay.
Also, I'm going to help humanity, but not thinking about possible ways it could go wrong.
And it does go absolutely incredibly wrong.
So wrong.
The concept of teleportation aside, this is the plot is, of course, it's a remake from a much earlier movie. It's a fun surface level, and surface level, it's plausible. You've got genes. A fly's got genes. So, could a couple of genes integrate like that? But from the real hardcore science perspective, is there any concept that there could be any merging between human and insect genes at all?
No. Not really. Insects are far enough separated from humans on the evolutionary tree that insect DNA, I mean, we have structures like mitochondria that are thought to once have been a symbiotic relationship with bacterial species, algae species, and that there have been these microbiological mergings over the years, and that we do have remnants of viruses and other microbes within our genome even today. But the idea that you take a current person and merge them with insect DNA, all you're going to have is a whole bunch of rejection and death. I'm just trying to imagine the restructuring and reshuffling of the genetic deck inside of all the cells of your body, and that's just going to go horribly awry. It's not going to work.
As an actual genuine scientist, someone who's done actual real sciencey type things, watching this movie, what about this? What about the science in this movie, the scientist movie in general? What rings true? What did you see where I'm like, okay, that resonates, I feel at home with what I just saw?
Well, actually, I was really interested in the way that he described teleportation in the beginning of the film, because it is it's close to what is happening now in quantum teleportation research, that they're working on creating these linked atoms, and basically you change the spin on one atom or an atomic particle in one place, and that has a mirror kind of spin change in another place. And it's not that you're teleporting an atom from place to place, it's that you're teleporting the state of the atom from one place to another. And the way that he described the teleportation was that it would be a reconstruction of the human. And that actually is fairly accurate, because as far as we know, physically, there is no possible way that we could take all the atoms, molecules that make up a person or anything, and erase them from one place and move them to another. So it was like verging on a real understanding of the way that teleportation would work. I mean, it did kind of take a lot of liberties from there, and there were inaccuracies, but I was interested in that.
So from that perspective, it's almost as if we could take my atoms and then replicate the state of those atoms on other atoms at some other place, but the real me would still be here.
Yes, or destroyed.
I don't like this plan.
Destroyed in one place, and then that replication of the state of you would be built in another place.
By the same token of a sciencey person who does real science, were you able to just enjoy the whole movie, or were there parts of it that you kind of had to check out for a little bit, let that move on, and check back in?
I really, really enjoyed the whole. I love this movie. This is one of my favorite movies, and it's just the grotesque changing of the body, where he thinks it's a disease at first, and then he's like, it's got to be some kind of cancer. There's all these stages to it, the progression of the physical manifestation of the genetic change, of that genetic fusion. I thought that was really interesting to watch. It's kind of like, it's like the most disgusting butterfly emerging from a chrysalis, right? Where what was the human shell what once was a human is just a shell that will be shed for the new creature that is Brundlefly. And so that I love watching that. But there were definitely, there are parts where it's just like, oh, come on, and for people who haven't seen the movie, I'm not gonna destroy the very end of it and what happens necessarily, unless you let me, Scott.
This movie
I mean, it's a movie from
old.
1986.
You are allowed to say anything you want about this movie. Spoiler alert, this 1986 monster movie. We're going to possibly spoil it for you or not. Go ahead.
Right. So, there's a certain suspension of disbelief throughout the film, right? And you get to the point of like, okay, he's has transported himself. He's merged with the fly. He's now becoming this Brundlefly, the fusion of the two creatures, human and fly. And that's cool. But then at the very end, he's like, I'm going to put Gina Davis in there, and I'm going to go in here, and Gina's pregnant, and the three of us will merge into one family being. And then it goes wrong, and Gina escapes, and the Brundlefly fuses with the transporter. And the technological aspect of that, where the computer's like, oh, I know what the transporter is, and I know what Brundlefly is, and I can identify that and go, they've merged. It was a little bit much. It's rich.
We get from organic matter to inorganic matter.
Yeah.
And this amazing computer that can build all these somehow doesn't understand the difference, or adds on the programming for the teleport. It does get a little weird. Now, one question from the chat room. They understand that you like this monster. Do you have a favorite sci-fi movie of all time?
Oh, wow.
I will tell everybody, while you think about that, it took us a long time to find a monster for Dr. Kiki to talk about, because she's spoiled for choice. She likes so many of them. She's like, I can't pick one. I can't pick one. So I had to keep poking her on Twitter, like, come on, let's go.
Oh, what about this one? What about this one? Every time I'd think about it, I'd be like, oh, what about that one? Oh, that one's really cool too. Oh gosh, I have a problem making decisions. Anyway, I can give you a movie. Fifth Element, I think, is my favorite sci-fi movie.
That is absolutely a wonderful, wonderful movie. Now, you can't go back. Another director could have done an awesome job at this movie, but David Cronenberg and general over-the-top, gross-out, go-too-far style fit so perfectly, and that manifested itself in these just crazy, gross-out special effects. As just a straight-up viewer, how much do you think the monster creature effects factor into the enjoyment of this movie?
I think a lot. I think they're great. I think there was maybe one point where I was like, oh, that's a model, and it's not actually Jeff Goldblume in the crazy makeup, and but I love watching him, pull his fingernails off, lose his teeth, and there's at one point he's working on his computer and trying to get it to recognize his voice, and his teeth fall out. He goes to bite his glove because he can't touch the keyboard anymore with his hands, because his hands have changed so much. He's wearing gloves, and he goes to bite his glove, and the teeth come out, and he just picks them up and he looks at them, and it's just the whole self-assessment, and his scientist brain is still there, dissecting every moment. And then there's the medicine cabinet of horrors. It's like all the parts that have fallen off of him. He's like left to be a museum in the medicine cabinet. I love that.
It's pretty impressive.
Who would do that?
The special effects team included Chris Wallace, who did The Naked Lunch. If you haven't seen that one, there's some wacky effects in that. Arachnophobia, Enemy Mine. He was the creature creator for Gremlins. So that is pretty much Hollywood royalty. Was there any part with the special effects or what the monster does? Did you have any of these where you just had to, it was too much for you and you're like, oh God, I can't watch that part, delightfully squicked out by it?
I think, oh, so yes, the when he vomits his digestive juices onto the hand
Hmm.
of his nemesis, and the hand starts melting away, and he does it again for the ankle of the guy, and it's stuff like that where it's like I know somebody is going to be feeling the physical pain, and I'm watching it happen, and it's just melting. I'm like, ah, and I have to cover my eyes in those kinds of moments.
That special effects person also was involved in the effects on Indiana Jones,
Oh,
and
great.
they did that the same way. So the same way they make the guy's face melt in Indiana Jones, they use the same techniques to do the guy's melting leg in The Fly. But
That is a wonderful tidbit. I did not know that. That's awesome.
the scene of his hand just dissolving is just that was too much for me. I think I only watched it all the way through probably the fourth or fifth time I watched the movie, but it was absolutely incredible. Now, of course, we got to talk about The Fly 2 a little bit. And did you have any thoughts on the sequel to this movie? Because you've got pregnant Gina Davis. We got to move forward. We got to see what happens with that story.
I didn't see The Fly 2.
Oh,
I never
goodness.
saw Fly 2.
I think you would. I think you would enjoy it. It's
So
not,
I need to see it for Baby Fly.
yes, yes. It's not as good as The Fly, but
Yeah.
they really just threw any concept of a life cycle out the window on this one, and they were just throwing stuff against the wall. So if you can kind of let that go, it's still a pretty fun movie. I'm trying to remember who the actor was, Eric somebody, but like one of the early Brat Pack type people was
Eric Stoltz?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he did a pretty good job in it, but it's also you got to think back when they made movies of this style back then, Gina Davis got to face off against an actual animatronic thing. Like that has to be a bit of an easier, Eric Stoltz was the person, yes, a bit of an easier job as an actor than to do all of this green screen work.
Yeah.
And you had to be wonder what was going through her head watching all of that stuff. From what you do, how do you think you would react if you were on the set with like that oozing nasty thing? They used egg and buttermilk and all kinds of stuff to pour down on it to make it look nasty.
I think it would be a lot easier than imagining, like, now it's just all green screen. Maybe they have, somebody standing there that you're acting next to or in front of, responding to them physically. But I've done a bit of green screen work, and it's hard to be like, oh, I'm imagining this thing here and, trying to come up with the emotional responses. I think it would be thrilling to have an actual animatronic melting fly monster, like at the end scene where she's fighting him and rips his jaw off in the fly. It's great. And it's like, obviously, yes, it's animatronic, but oh my gosh, it's so great.
I'm going to guess Gina Davis didn't have to work as hard as someone looking at a green screen when she's got to reach up and grab that thing and the eyes are falling out and everything. Like, it's, as a trained actor, she's probably, I can show I'm scared of this because this is absolutely terrifying.
This is terrifying. Its face is falling off. It's like...
We have Monster of the Week,
Ridiculous.
Former guest Phil Plate in the chat room. He says, quote, not as good as The Fly, end quote, is like saying a pile of poop is not as good as, say, French toast. And still trying to process this analogy. And A.B. Sigler's in the chat room. She says, 1 billion years ago, you and she attended a meetup in San Francisco at the 500 Club, and you had pan-galactic gargle blasters with gold wrap bricks and dry ice, and it was amazing.
It was amazing. Hi, A.
Here's one that I learned this as I was looking up trivia on it. Comedic legend Mel Brooks was one of the main producers of The Fly, and he kept that hidden from the public so people wouldn't think it was a comedy. Mel Brooks is even the person who came up with the film's iconic tagline during a production meeting. The tagline, "Be afraid, be very afraid," was conceived by Brooks and given to Veronica Quaife, Gina Davis's character, as a line of dialogue for the film. Brooks invented the line when debating how the character should react to Seth's early metamorphosis. That line is the tagline. They use it in the marketing and they use it on the movie posters, and it just has stuck over the years as this awesome bit of dialogue. As a viewer of the movie, you know Seth Brundle is completely screwed. But when Gina comes in with that scared stone face and does the be afraid, be very afraid, How does that make? How did that make you feel as a viewer? Does it still resonate with you?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it is. It's a freaky movie. It's like, I don't know. Now, I mean, watching it now as opposed to when I was younger, I'm probably not as terrified of it and find it more interesting. I still find all the gross stuff totally gross out, but yeah, it's still scary.
It is. It is
Very
pretty scary.
afraid.
And
Be very afraid.
all right, I'll ask you 2 more questions about it. Favorite acting moment in the movie? You described a couple of them. But was there a moment of this that just really stands out to you to be like, oh, that's great acting, and I'm just enamored with that because it's so scary or so riveting? Anything like that?
I spent just watching Jeff Goldblume's performance. I think he did overall a really amazing job. First, of being that kind of emotionally distant, geeky scientist character, just so focused on that work, and not as able to connect with people very well. He played that part all the way through very well. But then there were the moments where he was trying to figure out what was going on, and you could see in his eyes as he was talking and trying to work through things. I sat a few times and was like just watching his face as he was acting, and I'm like, damn. That is, I am there with him right now.
Yeah.
So
I think for me, I think Gina Davis's performance magnified the Jeff Goldblume's performance, magnified the monster effects, because she doesn't wilt at any point. It's all terrifying to her, but she sort of understands the gravity of what's going on the whole time. And that character is still in there ready to try and do what can be done. But she seems to figure out very early that this person she cares deeply about is absolutely screwed.
this is not, you're in trouble. And he's like, no, I'm not, and pushes her away. But she's still there for him. And even at the end, doesn't want to kill him, doesn't want to hurt him, even though it's gone too far.
I gotta say, she's a better person than I am. Because at that point...
Yeah, I know. You're like, you're gone. Okay.
At that point, love you. Love what you used to be. But you ain't from here no more. See you later. You gotta go. And
her dream scene, though, of where she dreamed of losing the baby that she was having with Goldblum. I was like, why is there so much blood? How come, what's happening here? And then it's a little worm thing. It's not little, it's like as big as a baby. It's like,
and that was Cronenberg was the doctor in that scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was pretty fun. Okay. Now, last bit with it. That's your favorite acting bit as far as all the monster stuff. Cause this is Monster of the Week. Is there a single favorite monstery part of this? That if you could only watch this few seconds of the movie, this is the thing you would watch.
Oh, geez. I think it would. See, this is the part where I can't make up my mind. There's too many moments to choose from. I think the part that I would watch is the part... Can you tell that I'm like saying words as I'm thinking? Like, give myself more time. This is how I order at restaurants as well.
You just let this part loop, and then this part over here is doing the work of finding the word.
Catch up, and it'll get in there. Yeah. I think I love the part of the movie where he's got like tons of energy right after the merge has happened. It's not merging, fusion has happened, and all of a sudden he gets up and starts doing all sorts of high bar gymnastics moves.
Yeah. Yep.
I love that part. Like, that's good. I'll watch that again.
I think for me, it's just the vomiting on the leg and watching the leg dissolve.
Just melt away.
And the everything about that, and the directorial approach, the framing, the lighting, everything, that you get that close-up scene, and the casualness with which Brundlefly does that, because he knows maybe Gina Davis is still a fellow creature to him, but this guy is just an enemy, just something to...
he has chosen. The fly part is taken over, and he is going to take out that enemy.
Yeah, that's the animal side of Seth Brundle now, which, animals don't have compassion. They don't think about these things. They just kill when it's time to kill. They eat when it's time to eat. That part is just, to me, is just the grossest.
Yeah.
Because the guy's already incapacitated and he can do nothing but watch his leg dissolve. And it's, just the worst. Just the worst.
But the guy, he, more power to the kind of, I don't know, the douchey boyfriend, ex-boyfriend. He lost his hand and he lost his foot at the ankle, and then he comes back to save the woman he loves. Yeah, I don't know.
He went to work. He put in his time. It's pretty solid. All right, so
it was so good.
For the people who joined us a little late, Dr. Kiki Sanford is one of the hosts of This Week in Science, which soon, is it on the 28th or 29th? There you go. That's the back.
The 29th.
29th.
Wednesday, the 29th.
Their top
yes, we
11
broadcast
stories.
every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific time.
Okay. And can you tease one of the stories that you'll be talking about on that podcast?
I cannot. We have not chosen the top 11 stories of the year yet. But if people think they have ideas of what should be on that list, they can tweet me or use the hashtag TwistTop11.
Okay. And you can see her Twitter is right on the screen right there. Dr. Kiki Sanford, thank you so much for being on Monster of the Week. Super fun. So thank you for picking one of the greatest monsters of all time. No question. Brundlefly's the best.
No question. Brundlefly's amazing.
All right.
Yes.
I will be tuning in for the top 11 stories. Wonderful to talk to you again, and see you later.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So good to see you.
And then I will hang up on her because that is how I do my very high-tech show. I just hang up on people because I don't know how to work the fancy technology yet. I did mention that the final episode of Season 1 of Monster of the Week is coming up next week on December 17th. Author J.D. Netto is doing our very special, heartfelt, family-style Christmas episode for the holiday season. We'll be talking about Krampus. I admit I have not seen Krampus yet, so A and I will be watching Krampus this week in order to get ready for this podcast. Looks like everybody out in the chat room, looks like you guys had a great time. Dr. Kiki Sanford's just an awesome guest. There she is in the chat room right now telling you, this is great. Look at that. I go, chat, you can't see her, but she's actually in the chat room telling people where to go. That is it for this week. I hope you guys have a great weekend. If you work this weekend, that sucks. I hope you enjoy that work. If you don't work this weekend, I hope you get some time off, hang out with your family, try and avoid the news, watch monster movies, because that's how we all get through everything. Be monstery to each other. And now I am going to sign off. Mwah!